द वे फॉरवर्ड इज तुहाडा बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। मैं तुहाडा होस्ट हरजोत सिंह। इस वेले सारी कंट्री बड़ी क्लोजली प्रेजिडेंट ट्रंप दी इंपीचमेंट प्रोसीडिंग्स देख रही है। As we speak, December 18th 2019 वेडनेसडे जिस वेले ये रिकॉर्डिंग हो रही है, इस वेले हाउस विच वोट पै रही है टू अप्रूव द इंपीचमेंट मोशन दैट हैज़ बीन ब्रॉट। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇਸ ਇੰਪੀਚਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ 'ਚ। ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਆਮੰਤਰਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਕੋਰਸਪੋਂਡੈਂਟ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਜੈਗ ਰਾਜਪਾਲ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ। ਜੈਗ, ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਵੈਰੀ ਮੱਚ ਫॉर ਕਮਿੰਗ ਟੂ ਦ ਸਟੂਡੀਓਜ਼ ਟੁਡੇ।
ਵੈਲਕਮ ਹਰਜੋਤ।
ਜੈਗ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਇੰਪੀਚਮੈਂਟ ਕਿਉਂ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਪਹੁੰਚੀ ਹੈ ਐਂਡ ਕੀ ਇਸ ਦੇ 'ਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਅੱਗੇ।
So Harjot, I think we last spoke about it. Impeachment start हुई सी almost 2 महीने पहले, around mid-September when the first time the inquiry start हुई सी. Around end of October, formal impeachment process, procedures, guidelines were established. Then Intelligence Committee and the Judiciary Committee, 2 committees they took the impeachment investigation to the next level. And finally, some articles of impeachment were drafted by the Judiciary Committee, charging the president on 2 points. एंड वो 2 पॉइंट्स ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਨ ਅੱਜ ਹਾਊਸ ਵੋਟ ਕਰੇਗਾ।
ਜੀ ਜੈਕ ਜੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਨ ਪੁਆਇੰਟਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਈਏ। ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਦੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਇੰਪੀਚਮੈਂਟ ਕੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈ।
So impeachment, it's a part of it's written in our constitution. It's a manner in which you can remove the president of United States for any high crimes, misdemeanors, things like bribery or treason. That's how it's listed in the Constitution. The sole power to impeach the president lies with the Congress. So as we know, our government is a 3-branch government. It's a co-equal branches, but the power to impeach the executive of the head of the executive branch, which is the president, lies with the Congress. So all this started with this call on 25th of July when President Trump had with President of Ukraine. And ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਾਫੀ concerns ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਈ ਸੀ, there was a whistleblower who said that he was very concerned in which the manner in which this call was conducted. ਉਸ call ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ investigation start ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ, and it led to several investigations. Many other testimonies happened. Many other committees of the Congress got involved, and it finally culminated with these 2 articles of impeachment against the president.
ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਥੋੜਾ ਹੋਰ ਜਾਨਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੇ। ਹੁਣ ਜਦ ਇਹ ਆਰਟੀਕਲਸ ਆਇਡੈਂਟੀਫਾਈ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ, ਡਰਾਫਟ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ, ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਹੈ? ਹਾਊਸ ਇਸ ਤੇ ਵੋਟ ਪਾਏਗਾ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ does that lead to removal from office or ਕੀ?
No, it's not removal of office. So House impeaches, and they will most likely impeach him tonight because the Democratic Party has enough number of votes. You require a simple majority to pass the impeachment articles. So that's what is expected to happen tonight. And once the House impeachment happens, then the case goes to Senate for a trial. So this is like House is like an indictment, a grand jury doing an indictment, doing some preliminary investigation and doing some formal charges, equivalent of that. And the actual trial is done by the Senate, in which the Chief Justice of United States, he's the presiding officer, unlike the Vice President, which on a normal course who presides on the Senate proceedings. And the Senate in the trial hundi hegi, outcome of that can lead to the removal of the president if he is convicted out of that process.
If he's found guilty of on any of the charges.
That's correct, yes. The difference being that for a Senate trial, for him or the president to be held guilty of the charges, threshold is much higher. You need 2/3 majority of the votes of the senators to say yes, we are convinced that he should be convicted of following articles.
So ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋਗੇ ਕੀ ਚਾਰजेस ਹੈਗੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਟਰੰਪ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ?
So there are 2 charges that are leveled against him. First is abuse of power. And the second one is obstruction of Congress. Very interesting, this whole process started with the call with Ukraine discussion, and the whistleblowers complaint also was that there was a very concerning quid pro quo involved. Then that's how the investigation started. It led to some discussions on that probably it's bribery cases are involved as well. But finally, when the House finally thought through, debated, investigated all the issues, took into consideration all the testimonies and various other political factors which are under play, I think they said the key article is abuse of power. That means he has used his office in a manipulative way to his advantage. And the second one is that he has done an obstruction of Congress, which means when Congress, which has the authority to do impeachment, he was not very supportive of it. He obstructed the conduction of Congress to conduct the business of impeachment, which in a nutshell, that's what it means.
So when they say abuse of power, so what exactly is the charge? How has he abused his power?
So this is where, it's a very litigious reasoning going on back and forth. But if you step back and look into it, impeaching any president at any point of time, it's a very solemn, sober activity. It's a very disastrous action that you're taking against the executive of the White House. So the charges that were leveled was that maybe he has tried to leverage the president of Ukraine to put some dirt on his political potential rival, Joe Biden.
I understand there was some 400 million approved to be given to Ukraine by the Congress, and it's alleged that he withheld that money as against the declaration of an investigation by President of Ukraine against Vice President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden.
Yes.
Is that so?
Yes, that's the allegation. The allegation is that Congress had approved, Department of Defense had approved, State Department had approved some package as well. So altogether it was $391 million worth of package which was to be delivered to Ukraine. And there were some significant delays in the release of that package to Ukraine. Now keep in mind, anytime Congress, which has the authority to release these funds to any country, not only Ukraine, the mechanism of how the money will get transferred, that's conducted by the White House. Congress does not say, okay, here's a check and Ukraine take it. So it has to go through White House, which is the executive body of that. So in that execution of the release of funds, why the delay happened, maybe it was intentionally withheld, that is what the investigation was about.
There's a delay, alleged delay of some 55 days, right?
Yes.
And what is the obstruction of Congress charge? So
obstruction of Congress is that when they started doing the investigation based on these allegations, they asked for, they subpoenaed many things from the White House. I want this documents, I want transcripts of so-and-so calls between your various staff, aides, and so on and so forth, senior advisors. President Trump, very thoughtfully thinking that he has done nothing wrong, he said that this is a sham process, so I'm not going to support it to begin with. His viewpoint was that I've already released the transcript of the call to public. It's a very straightforward call. Half the people, 50-50, are saying there's no concerning thing that happened in the call, so it's a sham process, so I'm not going to support it.
सारी कंट्री इस इशू पर काफ़ी डिवाइडेड है, मोस्टली पार्टी लाइन से डिवाइडेड है, बट ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਮੈਂਬਰਸ ਨਾਲ, ਇਹ ਜਾਣਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੀ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਹਨ। ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ। ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਟਰੰਪ ਦੀ ਇੰਪੀਚਮੈਂਟ ਦੀ। ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਬੜੀ ਡਿਵਾਈਡਡ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਮੈਂਬਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੀ ਫੀਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਟੁਡੇ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਵਿਦ ਅਸ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਪ੍ਰਿਥਵੀ ਠਕੁਰੀਆ, who is a senior business executive from Boston, and we have Mr. Gursheth Singh Gill, who is also a business executive from California. Mr. Takuria, Mr. Gill, you're both very welcome.
Pleasure is ours.
Mr. Takuria, how do you see this impeachment presently the country is undertaking?
I think that, as you rightly pointed out, the country is really divided, right? And I feel that we shouldn't have been in this position in the first place. The reason being, if you look at the background and history of this whole impeachment, correct? One is the inquiry is not the organic outgrowth of serious misconduct. It has been an orchestrated campaign right from day one since Trump took office. If you can imagine, just 27 minutes after the president was inaugurated on January 20th, 2017, the Washington Post reported that the campaign to impeach President Trump had begun. Thereafter, Democrats introduced 4 separate resolutions from 2017 through 2018 seeking to impeach him. This is way before the Mueller or the Ukraine investigations that started. So these acts totally discredits the impeachment process that we're in today. They were basically chasing fire without smoke from the outset. Then comes the Mueller report, and there was no collusion or wrongdoing. And that was a bust as well. And finally, the Ukraine transcript on which they lashed their hopes are falling apart as well. But thankfully for the Dems, the IG report came much later, or else it could have been even worse.
Mr. Gill, how do you see this whole situation?
Yeah, you know what? On one way, I agree with Mr. Takuri. I mean, the talks about impeachment started right after the inauguration, and I think it's been spoken about it throughout in the media and things like that. But talks about impeachment was always in the making for even President Obama, who was there for 8 years. I think it's more than just the talk about impeachment. It's the conduct of the president which is questionable over here. Mr. Takuri speaks about the Mueller report, and there was no finding in there. However, I actually disagree with them because I think that what Mueller report also cited is that they did not exonerate the president. That means that they did not give him the clear chit. And he also specified Robert Mueller was, in today's day and age, unless and until there is conclusive evidence in the report, he cannot actually name the president in the report. However, he did not even give him a clean chit. So there was obviously smoke, and there is no smoke without fire. Now, when you speak about the conduct of the president in pertaining to the Ukraine investigation and so on and so forth, the transcript actually specifies that there was quid pro quo. And, he has released the transcript, and that is the reason we are over here. So, I also agree with Mr. Korea that the country is extremely divided. There are, extreme emotions playing out at this point of time. It's obviously not good for the country. But, if you look at the bigger and broader picture, I mean, Donald Trump has done more harm to the country than it has done, in favor of the country, whether you look at the international politics, whether you look at the trade, whether you look at domestic policies, and whether you look at his team, who has, most of his important cabinet members either have been pushed out or resigned. So that is just my perspective on things.
Mr. Gill, impeachment is a legal process, right? And is a constitutional process, and there are particular charges in this situation, in this case. You can't impeach a president for being a bad president, or for the reasons that you don't like his policies, and you can't exonerate a president just because you like the president or he's bringing a great economy or whatever. What we have to look at are the individual charges which have been brought in this particular case. The Mueller report might have something to do, with the investigations, but the 2 charges that we have before us, right? His withholding aid to Ukraine for his own political reasons, and obstruction of Congress. So, Mr. Takuria, do you think those 2 charges hold any water?
I don't think so, because, if you have followed the impeachment closely, right, and if you have gone through all the witnesses that the Dems and the Republicans, both parties brought, the first one, right, holding back information or, hurting or obstructing justice, right, by not disclosing information. But President Trump was the first one who said, you know what, you want to see the transcript, here it is, and he kind of displayed it to the whole wide world, right? So, and there was nothing there, and there was a lot of spinning that took place around that. That's number one. Then number two, to your point of holding aid to Ukraine now, and that people talk about quid pro quo out there. Now, if you look at the transcript and if you look at the timeline of event that took place, Ukraine eventually got the funding without any official investigation being initiated by the Zelensky government.
But not before Congress intervened.
Not before it went public.
Not really though. I mean, if you look at the entire timeline and if you have a open-minded thing from all the different sources, right? So sometime around June or July, whenever this first phone call took place, Ukraine as a country, has been known to be highly corrupt and all the issues that they've had, right?
Okay.
And right from the get-go, President Trump, from 2017, he kept on saying that I'll be very, very careful of who gets our national aid, because at the end of the day, it's taxpayers' money, and we'll make sure that it goes to the right hand. Now, the previous government in Ukraine, which is very corrupt, as we all know, then Zelensky comes and he just wants to make sure that, what Zelensky promised and was his platform to get elected, he kind of carries forward. He keeps his word on that. And as part of the process, not him, but even the Congress had kind of slowed down the aid to Ukraine. But the important part is this, right?
Yes. I'm sorry, can I ask you something? Is Ukraine the only corrupt country in the world? Or
no, but
is there any other country withheld?
No,
I'm sorry,
it's a standard protocol. No, that's not the only one. There are a lot of other countries. Like if you look at Pakistan, if you look at a few other countries where aid were withheld, the same rule applied. It just wasn't Ukraine, correct?
So Harjot, if I may interject out here, and Mr. Takuri, and I'm sorry that I'm interjecting out here, is only because the aid was approved by Congress. The President of the United States had no right to stop it unless and until the Congress again votes on it. And the aid was not in terms of money or in terms of food or in terms of logistic. It was specifically for defense, because there's a history of Russian aggression and the annexation of Crimea, which has happened. And there were javelins, which were, I think short-range missiles, which were supposed to be delivered to Ukraine. And there's no sense of corruption over there.
No,
so 2 points
can
over here, boys.
if I may just add out there something very quick,
Sure,
and I'll let the other gentleman speak, right? So talking about javelin, right? When Obama was the president, when Ukraine reached out to Obama's administration for aid, all they got were, blankets and food and those kind of stuff, right? Trump, and during the entire Obama's 8 years of tenure out there, Ukraine got nothing because whatever reason. I don't want to go give the political details. All I'm trying to steer clear is our facts, right? So during Obama's days, nothing went, no military aid was given to Ukraine. And when Trump comes along, and he had one litmus test, a sniff test, saying that countries who receive the U.S. aid has to prove that they're doing the right thing, and these are all the attributes and checklists. And Ukraine happened to go through the same thing. And once he got the confidence from the leadership that they'll do the right things, the aid was released even before the investigations to Biden or Burisma or whatever else took place. So
that's not true, because the wind of
if I can interject,
gone out.
The issue that comes over here, and I think I see both the points. President Trump has been releasing the aid for Ukraine in 2017 and 18. So this is not the first year the aid was released. So the question, I think, on the arguments on both sides. So I'll take the first side. That why has President Trump not objected to the aid being given to Ukraine in 2017 and 2018? All of a sudden in 2019, how he was so concerned, even despite the fact that the corrupt government of Ukraine did not exist. So that's point A on the other side. On the flip,
very valid point, yeah.
On the flip side, in terms of execution of the delivery of the aid, yes, it was approved by Congress, but I was talking to Harjot earlier on. Congress approves the aid, but Congress does not write the check. It has to be executed through White House. So during the process, of course, White House has the entire prerogative to see what proposals have been passed, what kind of aid has been authorized, and do need to check few things extra to make sure that the aid is being given the right way, in the right manner, and so on and so forth. So in that due process, if it takes them 30 days, 40 days, or for that matter, 100 days, I don't think it should be mattered. I think
Mr. Jakwal, you're absolutely right, but there is more at play than what meets the eye over here. You know, the ambassador to Ukraine was fired because she wasn't playing ball. The ambassador of EU who had no business going into Ukraine and work on these logistics. All of a sudden became a center person, and then except for the State Department, who should have been involved over here, you have his personal lawyer going and trying and digging dirt for against the political rebel. So I get all the part. Who writes the check? What is who's responsible for what? But you know what? I mean, so much is happening in Ukraine, and you're talking about a president who has been known to do things his way and leverage his personal connections or leverage his business interests more than the interest of the nation. I mean, look at the hotel in Washington, D.C. Everybody is prompted to come and stay over there, and he writes back taxes for $10,000 a year on it. I mean, that's one more example. His son-in-law is the head of the international policies for Middle East and not the State Department. His son-in-law makes direct phone calls to Saudi prince, on a first-name basis. I mean, what are you talking about over here?
Yeah,
So
Mr. Gill, I would like to jump in, and I would like to say again, there are two charges here which we are discussing, right? And you can have your political disagreements, or you can have accuse Mr. Trump of other misconducts, but right now, what the country is discussing and what we are discussing are those two charges. And I think we have this much of agreement. Yes, there was a delay in release of those funds. The two arguments are whether it was done to, because there was corruption, and Mr. President had the good faith, endeavor to hold the funds till something was done about the corruption, or did he do it because he wanted some political favor? We have some witnesses and we have some evidence on that. We will talk about that after a short break. ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ The Way Forward। The Way Forward ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ। So before going to the break, we said that we agree that there was a delay. Now what we have to establish is what was that delay because of, right? Now, Mr. Prithvi, are you completely dismissing the evidence given by people like Alexander Vindman or Jennifer Williams, who are advisors and who have been involved in the process, and they saw some wrongdoing? What do you say to that?
See, I have all the respect for the people who work for the government and for the country. All the officials from State Department. I think they all have the right heart in the right place. And I'm not here to judge anybody or the motives or whatever it is, right? But as a layman, I mean, and though I call myself a conservative, let's make one thing very clear. I voted for Obama twice, right?
Okay.
And so for me, it's all about principle. It's all about the right thing. Everything has to be black and white. So all this bureaucrats, they have the right, intention, the right heart, the right base, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, when you go after impeaching a president, is the most solemn duty that the House of Reps can do, right? And it's a court of law, basically. And the way you'd go after any criminal or anybody or a felon, you'd want to do the right thing. And my only objection is this, that what has come forward so far, they don't really all add up to the level of impeachment, right? So now people might disagree with his policies. That's not impeachable. Like I think someone rightly said, you don't like his performance. That's not impeachable. You like his performance. That's not impeachable, right? It has to really bubble up to the top. And I don't think that's really happened. Now, firing off ambassadors or whatever it is, that's at the discretion of the president. They serve at his pleasure, right? And they can be fired for whatever reason there has to be no reason in the very first place. So those things are not really impeachable offenses. Is it right? I don't know.
I'm
Is it
sorry.
wrong? I don't know.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chakuria. I'll seek a little clarification. So what you are saying, something wrong has happened here, but it does not rise to the level of impeachment. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that's wrong. What I'm saying is that firing an envoy to Ukraine is, it's not really an impeachable offense, right?
No,
I mean,
but there's a scheme behind it. That's what the allegation is.
I'm sure. My thing is, if they find something, if they can connect all the dots and they can conclusively prove that something, something really bubbled up to that level, I'm all for it. I mean, you go for it. But so far, the evidence that has been put forward, it's not there. I mean, it's not there. That's the thing that I'm battling with.
I concur with Prithvi, I think, a little bit over here. I think when you're driving a process like impeachment, where the consequences are so extreme, you are removing the President of the United States, who's elected by the citizens. It should be conducted in a very impartial, unbiased, fair manner, backed by facts that are undisputed.
And you think here the facts don't add up?
And the eventual conviction, if and howsoever it may come, it should be done in a manner which is beyond a shadow of doubt. Beyond, and I said, in very strong words, beyond a shadow of doubt, because you're impeaching the president. It's not a misdemeanor or anything like that. And until that time, the person should be held not guilty. In all these corners, was President Trump being held not guilty from day one? As Prithvi said, people have been saying, no, he should be impeached. Was this process done in an impartial and unbiased manner? Probably not, because it's a rush job going on, because there is some political timelines being put into it.
I understand. Mr. Gill, do you think the evidence adds up?
So two things. One, what Mr. Rajpal and Mr. Chakuria said, I agree with them on the process of it, but I disagree with them on the evidence of it. I think that for all the depositions who were called, the people who work for State Department, the the ambassador, the lifetime diplomats, and the EU secretary. I mean, there is evidence, there's verbatim evidence which they called out in their depositions, which adds up to this. Right? I mean, this is abuse of power, and this is quid pro quo classic 101. So according to me, I think it adds up. I think they've followed due process. If you think that they have tried to do it, in an expedited way, yes, they have. Whether they could have done it even more properly, maybe, I don't know. But I think, I agree with them on the process part of it, but I think there's enough evidence.
Mr. Chakuria, it's a difficult situation when both sides look at the same evidence and reach different conclusions. And I don't know what is the solution for that. How do you see Rudy Giuliani's role in this? Was it fair for the president to use his private attorney? If it was just pure corruption or legit, he could have used FBI, CIA, he could have done it through the embassy. Why did it need a private attorney to do this?
Right. So to that point, right, again, the president has at his discretion to use whatever he wants to use.
I would disagree. There. He's not a king.
Fine. I mean,
I'm sorry.
But if you look at the historical precedents, right, whether it's Eisenhower, whether you look at Clinton, you name anybody, they've all used private emissaries to get job done. Now, whether and it's not the first time that has happened. So that's part one, right? Part two is that Rudy Giuliani as a person, was he the right person? I don't think so, right? The reason being he's got a lot of baggage.
That's a different question. That's a
right?
Yeah.
So
I don't think he had baggage, but I think his baggage now after he associated with Donald Trump. I think he was America's mayor.
No. I won't say that because of association with Donald Trump. My biggest problem that I had was his relationship with those two Ukrainians who were arrested recently and the dealing that he had, right? I mean, I don't know how
it came out. Otherwise, we would have never known about.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I meant by baggage. He was one of the greatest mayor. Associating with Trump is not really a baggage. I was talking more about that particular angle, right? So I don't know. I mean, that part I'm not very sure. But as far as the avenue of using a private emissary, whoever that may be, whether it's Giuliani or Tom or Harry, that's at the discretion of the president.
Mr. Takuria, I want to ask you, how do you see Mitch McConnell's position that he is coordinating with the White House on what to do at the Senate trial? Is that the role of the Senate?
This whole thing is so political, right? I mean, like I said, this whole thing is so political. When Nixon was impeached or when Clinton was impeached, there was a political, flavor to it, but they were based on a lot of facts. There were things that people could see. Okay, this was something that was wrong. This was something that the president should have done. Here, everything's so political, right? I mean, both the Republicans and the Democrats, they are just, going by their, ideologies, right? Now, McConnell doing what he's doing at the White House, again, I think. Is it right? I don't know. I mean, I think he's doing what he's supposed to do.
He's doing exactly what the Democratic Party did in Clinton impeachment. Tom Daschle was the leader of the Senate. He and his staff coordinated extremely and closely with Bill Clinton, who was the president at that time. Did they declare it? They declared it. In fact, Tom Daschle was asked recently that, did you coordinate? First he said, I did not coordinate. And then his staff reminded him, sir, we did coordinate very closely with President Clinton. And then he had to redact and say, yes, we did coordinate very closely. Chuck Schumer, who says, if you go back the videos on YouTube, he's shown in the video saying, we have all the rights to closely coordinate with the White House on each and every testimony and the witnesses and so forth. So, I think the tables have turned. It's a very partisan environment, and that's what is going on.
Yes. Mr. Gill, what do you think about that?
I mean, it's who says what and what portion of the information you want to believe in. I was just tracking the news, and they've already voted. They have achieved 260 votes needed to impeach. But however, it's on the lines of the party and 2 against Democrats, which have flipped to Republicans. But you know what? There is so much going on in today's day and age. I actually want to take a higher road, and when I look at United States, which is a land of opportunity, I think that the whole concept of being accountable is going away. And that is my biggest problem with this. I want to see that if you do something wrong in this country, you are actually held accountable. Nobody's above the law. So that is my perspective, and I really don't want to get into what YouTube videos and who said what and who aligned with what with President Clinton and who's aligning with this thing. As a matter of fact, one of the Republicans.
Mr. Gill, we understand that Mr. Takuria has some constraints on time. Before we let him go, just one last question, Mr. Takuria. How do you see these very close associates of the president, his advisor, his national security advisor, 5 people in total being convicted of crimes, felonies, being in jail? How do you see that?
I think that's, like I said, like Mr. Gill said, right? No one should be above the law. If you've done something wrong, you pay the price.
Does it show anything on the president being surrounded by these people, or you think he's oblivious of what's going around him?
You are not proven until guilty, right? So just because they did something does not mean the president did something, right? And until proven otherwise. And for the same token, after the IG's report came out, Comey's of the world, who were supposedly innocent, is coming out on the wrong side now, right? So we just have to wait and see. I think we have jumped to conclusions many times over in this country in the last 2-3 years, right? From the Mueller report to 29 minutes after swearing on the president and so on and so forth. So I think we just hold our horses a little bit, let the chips fall where they might be, and take it from there. But I totally agree that this country is really breaking apart. I think this political impeachment is a horrible thing for the country, and I think we should get a quick closure on this one.
Yes.
And the last part that I'd like to add is that whatever we hear, there have been precedences in every dimension of it, whether it's White House coordinating with the Senate or the Dems blocking witnesses. Those are nothing new. That's kind of political game playing. I mean, it goes on, right? So nothing new.
So we will know in a few weeks what is worse, the political, act of bringing in this impeachment, or the lack of accountability, which some people are alleging at this stage. Mr. Takuria, we really appreciate your taking out this time at the short notice. We wish you had more time, but we will love to have you here again.
Pleasure is absolutely mine, Harjot. Thanks a lot for having us here, and thanks to the rest of the panel as well. Nice talking to you, gentlemen.
You're welcome. ਅਸੀਂ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ। ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਇਸ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਡੋਨਲਡ ਟਰੰਪ ਦੀ ਇੰਪੀਚਮੈਂਟ ਦੀ। ਜੈਗ, let me ask you this. So the position that Mitch McConnell has taken, right, is that a fair position for the trial?
Like I said, Joe, I think the whole process from day one has not been impartial, unbiased, and fair. The House process also was not fair, and we expect the same thing at the Senate level as well. Like I was saying previously, the position that McConnell has taken, that of close coordination, that's nothing new. There's nothing written in the Constitution or in the Senate rules that
I would
the Senate
disagree.
should do or not do.
I would strongly disagree, because it says an impartial jury trial. They have to work as a jury.
So
A jury can't come in and say that this is what we're going to do.
So if you take that into example, if you take an impartial juror, how can the Senate be impartial juror when you have the Kamala Harris, the Elizabeth Warrens of the world, Bernie Sanders of the world, and all these guys who are running for the Democratic primary, and they are saying we need to oust President Trump.
What do you say
That's
to
our number one agenda.
Yeah.
And they are the ones who will be voting.
I hear
They
you.
are not.
What do you say to that, Mr. Gill?
Well, it's actually the other way around. I mean, the whole reason we have reached out here is because Donald Trump. We actually forgetting the point why we over here because President Donald Trump was looking for dirt against his number one political rival. So if he expects that his other political rivals are going to go down as fair in this thing, it's obviously not going to happen. But they have the right to be there. They are senators. They have the right to vote. So, and I think that good sense is going to prevail in all the 100 senators, and they're going to do the right thing. But what I do believe in the process, and I think the process will eventually be extremely sound.
Jag, how do you see all these convictions about President Trump?
I think there's some very serious allegations that are against him, and there's some element of probably, I think, seriousness in there. We just haven't seen, or we haven't given it enough time. My personal view, I think, is that there's been a rush to come to a judgment that has happened.
Yes.
And I think we should have given more time to get a larger mandate of the country behind it, rather than a split country, which is what is happening right now.
Mr. Gill, is that reasonable? Just because you don't want this process to go too close to the election, the general election, you are rushing it up. Something which is this serious, is that the kind of seriousness it deserves?
Yeah, but again, and the flip side is that if the Democrats don't rush into it, the Republicans are going to make a play that this is because we are in 2020, this is the election year, and that's the reason Democrats are doing it. No, it's the other way around. They're doing it because it's all over. They're doing it because there's something wrong over there. They're doing it because they're holding the president of the United States accountable. So they want to do it before the Republicans call it, Ukraine murder. This is the election year, and this is the reason why they're impeaching. So they're both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
But we talk about accountability very much, and this country, we want to hold people accountable. But there is a due process as well. So where is the due
And I think
process
the
in
problem
this,
is
in this rush judgment
I
to
think that
impeach the
process was
president?
followed. Whatever the process laid out in the Constitution of the United States and the depositions of all the witnesses and whatever needed to be done has been done. Now, whether you say it was an accelerated process, I mean, if you, and Donald Trump knows it better, you know, you speak about business. Business decisions sometimes can take forever, but sometimes the business needs to be nimble and needs to evolve. So in this case, you know, the Democrats felt the need that they need to do it ASAP before the election year kicks in. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Well, I mean, there's the political angle into the due process, right?
Yes.
Which is itself is a contradictory to the due process argument itself to begin with.
Jack, let me ask you this. You know, there were at least two Republican witnesses, Kurt Volker and Tim Morrison, right? How do you see total failure on the part of White House to cooperate with the process? That's one of the charges. But do you not think that it is well deserved?
You know, yes, I think, you know, should White House have done a better job of supporting the process? Absolutely. You know, should they have taught the process like this? No. I think one of the bigger problem I see, I think, which in terms, I think if you look in hindsight, I think when President Trump nominated Giuliani to run this whole shadow political process in Ukraine, he should have done it officially. I think that could have solved a lot of problems, whether or not people like Giuliani's personality or not. He should have said, here's my special envoy, and presidents have done in past. If he had done so, a lot of this, I think, ambiguity would have been gone.
I disagree. I mean, if you are a special envoy, you still need to be within the boundaries of the State Department.
Yes, and they should have followed this process.
Agent,
But,
you know.
but Mr. Gill, my question is this. How should we see absence of Mick Mulvaney, right, Michael Duffy, from coming and testifying in Michael Bolton in favor of President Trump, because they have first-hand knowledge of what happened. If they are, withholding something, there might be something sinister there. Is it not fair to read it like that? What do you suggest?
There's obstruction of information from both sides. You may call it that. I think Michael Bolton, to be really honest, would have not spoken. According to me, he would have spoken the truth, even though he was extremely hawkish and he has his own, the older baggage with him. But I think, Michael Bolton being the national security advisor and the security threat which Russia plays in this aspect of the impeachment, I think he would have said the truth.
Mr. Gill, we have ran out of time here. Thank you so much for participating in this spirited debate today. Jack, thank you very much. More would be happening in the coming days, and we hope to have you here again and enlighten us and our viewers on what's happening. Thank you very much. To see Way Forwar.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.